In the boundless darkness of the Warhammer 40,000 galaxy, where countless horrors and marvels clash for survival, the Tyranids stand apart as an unparalleled force of nature. They are not a faction in the traditional sense, but a singular entity, a relentless swarm spanning light years and devouring all in its path. To call the Tyranids an army would be a disservice. They are a biological machine, finely tuned and unfathomably vast, operating with a purpose as ancient as life itself: consumption and assimilation. The Tyranid swarm is more than a collection of creatures. It operates with a level of coordination and precision that dwarfs even the most disciplined armies of the Imperium. Yet, this unity raises a tantalizing question. How does a hive mind spanning countless worlds and billions of individual organisms function? What binds these creatures together into an unbreakable will, allowing them to act as one, adapt seamlessly, and react instantaneously to threats? The answer lies in the Tyranid Synaptic Network, an invisible web of psychic control that binds every drone, beast, and monstrous creation to a singular purpose. It is not a conventional command structure with officers and soldiers. Rather, it is a living mind spread across countless forms, directing its forces with an intelligence so alien it defies mortal comprehension. This network is both the Tyranids' greatest strength and perhaps their most enigmatic feature. To understand the Tyranid Synaptic Network is to glimpse the mechanics of an organism that is at once many and one. It reveals the true scale of the Tyranid threat, for they do not simply march to war, they reshape the very fabric of the battlefield with their presence. The network's influence extends far beyond mere coordination, weaving a tapestry of psychic domination that can extinguish the light of entire civilizations. The hive mind is not merely a strategy, it is survival perfected. The synaptic network ensures adaptability, efficiency, and an overwhelming capacity for destruction, leaving its victims unable to comprehend the scale of what they face. Those who stand against the swarm often describe a sense of suffocating dread, as if they were battling not creatures, but the universe itself turning against them. As we delve into the intricacies of the Tyranid Synaptic Network, we will explore its architects, its methods, and its mysteries. From the creatures that serve as its psychic nodes to the devastating consequences of its activation, this system is the lifeblood of the swarm, the reason for its unyielding dominance. The stage is set to unravel the secrets of the Unbreakable Mind and to confront the question: can such a force ever truly be stopped? The Tyranids are unlike any other force in the galaxy, for they are not an alliance, empire, or nation, but a singular, ever-evolving organism composed of countless bioforms working in perfect harmony. At the core of their terrifying efficiency is the hive mind, an immeasurable consciousness that dictates the actions of its swarm. This mind exerts its will through a complex psychic network that spans entire systems, ensuring that even the smallest Tyranid creature serves a greater purpose. This network is sustained and amplified by specific bioforms known as synapse creatures, organisms genetically designed to channel and enforce the hive mind's control. Among these synapse creatures, there is a hierarchy defined not by rank but by biological function. Each type of synapse bioform serves a unique role in maintaining the cohesion and adaptability of the swarm. At the top of this structure are the hive tyrants, towering intelligent beings that act as the hive mind's generals. These creatures are not merely conduits of its will. They possess a form of independent decision-making granted by their immense psychic connection, allowing them to adapt strategies to local circumstances without the need for constant guidance. However, their autonomy is only an extension of the hive mind's intent, never truly separate from it. Beneath the hive tyrants are other synaptic entities, such as Tyranid primes, zoanthropes, and neurothropes. Tyranid primes are warrior bioforms imbued with enhanced intelligence and synaptic control, making them ideal leaders for smaller detachments of Tyranid forces. While their focus is combat-oriented, they also serve as crucial nodes for maintaining the hive mind's influence over distant or heavily contested areas of the battlefield. Zoanthropes and neurothropes, on the other hand, are primarily psychic amplifiers. Their immense psychic potential allows them to bolster the hive mind's reach and intensity, reinforcing the swarm's connection and disrupting enemy efforts to interfere with its coordination. One of the most notorious among these psychic bioforms is the Swarm Lord, a being of such deadly precision and intelligence that it is regarded as a singular and recurring manifestation of the hive mind's will. Unlike standard hive tyrants, which are born, consumed, and reformed as needed, the Swarm Lord is a specialized entity that emerges only in moments of extreme need. Its existence is a testament to the hive mind's adaptability, as it not only commands the swarm, but also applies lessons learned from previous conflicts. The Swarm Lord is feared not only for its martial prowess, but for its unparalleled ability to outthink and dismantle enemy plans. Another critical component of the Synaptic Network is the Broodlord, a bioform designed to operate at a more covert level. Broodlords are typically associated with genestealer cults, where they serve as the synaptic bridge between the hive mind and the hybrid offspring of these insidious infiltrators. Their role is unique in that they extend the network's influence long before a full invasion begins, sowing chaos and undermining planetary defenses before the swarm's arrival. While the larger synapse creatures dominate the battlefield and strategy, smaller bioforms such as warriors and raveners also carry synaptic capabilities, though to a lesser degree. These creatures are often tasked with extending the reach of the hive mind across vast terrain, ensuring that even the farthest elements of the swarm remain linked to the overarching will. Their presence stabilizes the swarm's lesser creatures, preventing them from falling into disarray or reverting to instinct-driven chaos. Together, these synapse creatures form a psychic relay that stretches across entire planets and void zones, binding trillions of organisms into a unified force. Their connection is what allows the Tyranids to function as a singular, overwhelming entity, immune to fear, miscommunication, or internal rebellion. Unlike conventional hierarchies that may fracture under pressure or distance, the Tyranid Synaptic Network is remarkably robust, adapting seamlessly to disruptions as long as synaptic creatures remain active. The sheer variety and specialization within the ranks of these bioforms reveal the extent of the hive mind's mastery of biological engineering. Each creature, from the towering hive tyrant to the insidious broodlord, is a vital piece of the network, ensuring that the swarm operates with terrifying efficiency. Without these nodes of control, the swarm would devolve into a mindless horde, unable to coordinate its movements or strategies. Yet with them, it becomes an unstoppable tide of death, capable of overwhelming even the most fortified bastions of the galaxy. These synaptic beings are not mere commanders in the traditional sense, but living conduits that channel the hive mind's insatiable will, ensuring that the swarm's objectives are executed with precision and purpose. The origins of the Tyranid Synaptic Network trace back to a purpose far beyond the comprehension of most mortal minds. While many forces in the galaxy evolve through necessity or trial, the Tyranids were never a product of chance. Their entire existence is defined by a deliberate design to achieve unparalleled unity and domination. The hive mind did not simply arise as a guiding force, but was the culmination of eons of adaptive perfection, engineered to ensure absolute control over its myriad bioforms across unimaginable distances. At its core, the creation of the Synaptic Network was not just a solution to the logistical challenges of warfare, but the fundamental requirement for the swarm's survival. The immense scale of the Tyranid organism, with its countless bioforms spread across entire systems, demanded a coordination mechanism that could not fail, regardless of environmental disruption or external interference. The limitations of physical communication, whether auditory, visual, or chemical, were insufficient to manage an entity of such staggering proportions. Instead, the hive mind developed a means of communication that transcended conventional biology, a form of psychic resonance capable of instantaneously linking billions of organisms through thought alone. The precise point in time when the synaptic network was first developed remains unknown, as do the exact circumstances surrounding its genesis. The Tyranids have always appeared as a unified swarm, already perfected by the time they entered the galaxy. However, scholars and xenobiologists who have studied what little evidence exists have speculated that the hive mind's creation of this psychic web was not an isolated incident, but a response to an existential threat. Some theories suggest that the Tyranids' original prey were entities that could not be overwhelmed by mere numbers or brute strength, forcing the hive mind to evolve beyond instinct-driven predation into something more deliberate and coordinated. Unlike conventional communication methods, the synaptic network did not require incremental improvement. Instead, it appears to have emerged as a fully realized system designed to channel psychic energy in ways that mimic neural pathways on a galactic scale. This organic yet psionic structure ensured that the hive mind could exert its influence without degradation, no matter how far its tendrils reached. The network's inception allowed the Tyranid swarm to remain cohesive across the void, adapting and reorganizing itself with perfect synchronization. The decision to anchor this psychic framework within specialized bioforms was likely not the result of trial and error, but a deliberate choice to ensure redundancy and adaptability. By embedding its influence in synaptic nodes rather than a single controlling point, the hive mind effectively created a decentralized network immune to catastrophic failure. Even if key nodes were severed, the network could reconfigure itself around new connections, allowing the swarm to maintain cohesion. This redundancy is not only a testament to the hive mind's foresight, but a chilling reminder of the lengths to which it will go to preserve its dominance. Another pivotal factor that likely influenced the development of the synaptic network was the hive mind's ambition to control not only its own creations, but also foreign systems and minds. The network is not merely an internal mechanism for coordination, but an offensive weapon capable of subverting and assimilating the psychic resonance of entire species. By establishing dominance over psychic wavelengths, the hive mind can nullify enemy communications, disrupt defensive formations, and instill primal fear into its foes. This level of control could not have arisen from necessity alone. It speaks to a deeper strategy that defines the Tyranid's evolution. Ultimately, the emergence of the synaptic network represents the perfection of unity as a survival strategy. It is believed that the hive mind's earliest iterations may have experimented with purely biological methods before fully embracing its psychic evolution. Once it developed the means to bind its creations through thought rather than instinct, it became an unbreakable force. This network allowed the Tyranids to conquer vast expanses of space without the vulnerabilities that plague more conventional civilizations: miscommunication, rebellion, and fragmentation. The network became the Tyranids' defining strength, turning a swarm of biological constructs into a singular, unrelenting consciousness. Despite the attempts of the galaxy's greatest minds to understand or predict the synaptic network's evolution, one truth remains clear. The Tyranids did not stumble upon this system by accident. It is the culmination of an intent that transcends time and space, built to achieve dominance through seamless coordination. Whatever the exact origin may be, the synaptic network serves as the foundation of the Tyranids' unyielding march across the stars, a living testament to their mastery over their own evolution. This level of control did not emerge from desperation or chaos, but from a vision of unassailable supremacy, honed by eons of adaptation and conquest. The development of the Tyranid Synaptic Network can be understood as a process of constant refinement and adaptation. Though it is difficult to pinpoint exact moments of change due to the Tyranids' mysterious origins, the structure of the network has demonstrated a clear pattern of evolution as the hive mind continues to perfect its means of control. At its most basic level, the synaptic network functions as a vast web of psychic connections that bind every bioform to the hive mind's will. This web is not static, but is dynamic, constantly adjusting based on the needs of the swarm. When the Tyranids first appeared in the galaxy, their use of synaptic control was already terrifyingly effective. However, initial encounters revealed an important vulnerability. If key synaptic creatures were destroyed, the lesser organisms within the swarm would revert to animalistic behavior. In response to this weakness, the hive mind began to diversify the roles and structures within the network to create greater redundancy and flexibility. The first observed structure of the synaptic network was relatively hierarchical. At its core were large, powerful synaptic creatures that acted as central nodes for vast sections of the swarm. However, this approach placed significant strain on these key nodes and made them high-priority targets for defenders. Over time, the hive mind addressed this issue by increasing the number and diversity of synaptic creatures, creating a more distributed system. Instead of relying solely on a few dominant nodes, the network expanded with multiple layers of psychic relays, ensuring that the loss of a single node would not result in a collapse of control. One of the clearest examples of this shift was the emergence of mid-level synapse creatures like Tyranid warriors and primes. These bioforms were more numerous and mobile than larger synaptic entities, allowing the hive mind to extend its influence across complex and shifting battlefields. Their role was to bridge the gaps between the primary synaptic creatures and the lesser bioforms, creating a layered web of control. This ensured that even if a higher-level synaptic creature was destroyed, local control could be maintained until reinforcements arrived or a new chain of command was established. Another significant evolution was the enhancement of psychic amplification within specific bioforms, such as zoanthropes and neurothropes. These creatures became critical components of the network, acting as living psychic beacons that could project the hive mind's influence across vast distances. This not only strengthened the cohesion of the swarm, but also allowed the hive mind to overcome interference from enemy psychers and environmental factors. The development of these amplifiers demonstrated the hive mind's ability to adapt its network in response to external threats, making it increasingly difficult for adversaries to disrupt its control. As the swarm encountered new species and forms of resistance, the synaptic network adapted to incorporate new tactics and structures. For example, in engagements against highly mobile or decentralized foes, the network became more fluid, prioritizing smaller, more adaptable synaptic nodes that could quickly re-establish control in the midst of chaotic combat. In contrast, during planetary invasions where overwhelming force was necessary, the network would consolidate around larger, more powerful synaptic hubs to maximize the psychic pressure exerted on the enemy and ensure total coordination across a massive theater of war. One of the most notable features of the synaptic network is its resilience. Even when synaptic creatures are eliminated, the network does not crumble immediately. Instead, it recalibrates, often shifting command to nearby nodes or reabsorbing severed portions of the swarm until control is re-established. This resilience is not merely a defensive adaptation, but a fundamental feature of the network's design. It allows the swarm to endure losses that would cripple conventional armies, maintaining cohesion even in the face of catastrophic damage. The structure of the network also evolves in real time during engagements. The hive mind can reroute its psychic influence depending on the conditions of the battlefield, strengthening areas where resistance is fiercest or withdrawing connections from less critical fronts to reinforce key objectives. This dynamic reconfiguration gives the swarm an almost supernatural ability to adapt to shifting circumstances, rendering traditional strategies based on static battle lines ineffective. Another layer of evolution is the hive mind's increasing use of synaptic redundancy in its larger invasions. Entire clusters of synaptic bioforms are deployed in overlapping formations, creating layers of psychic influence that ensure even the most concentrated enemy efforts cannot sever the swarm's control entirely. This overlapping structure makes it nearly impossible to disorient the swarm through targeted strikes, as each level of the network is supported by additional nodes that can assume control if needed. Throughout the development of the synaptic network, the underlying principle has remained the same: absolute unity through psychic domination. Yet, the methods by which this unity is maintained have grown more sophisticated with each passing engagement. The network is not a static creation, but an ever-changing self-optimizing system designed to eliminate weaknesses and maximize the efficiency of the swarm's operations. The more the hive mind encounters resistance, the more it refines its control, ensuring that future invasions become even more devastating. This constant evolution has made the Tyranid Synaptic Network one of the most formidable aspects of the hive mind's strategy. It is not only a tool of coordination, but a living system that learns, adapts, and perfects itself over time. As long as the network endures, the swarm remains an unbreakable force, advancing with precision and unity that no other species in the galaxy can match. This adaptability and resilience have ensured that, no matter the battlefield or the foe, the Tyranids remain a relentless and unified threat, ever improving and ever hungry. One of the defining moments that demonstrated the unparalleled strength of the Tyranid Synaptic Network occurred during the infamous assault on the planet Tyran, a world that would become synonymous with the nightmare of the hive fleets. This was not the first recorded Tyranid incursion, but it marked the first time the galaxy at large became truly aware of the full scope of the threat they posed. It was during this catastrophic event that the importance of the synaptic network became terrifyingly clear, both in its ability to coordinate the swarm and in the psychological impact it had on those who faced it. Tyran was a heavily fortified outpost, strategically vital as a scientific and defensive bastion. The defenders, primarily comprised of planetary defense forces and a cadre of battle-hardened soldiers, had prepared extensive fortifications, believing that their superior technology and entrenched positions would be enough to repel any invader. What they could not anticipate, however, was the overwhelming level of coordination and precision the Tyranids would bring to bear. When the hive fleet descended, it was not a mindless flood of beasts, but an orchestrated assault that began with an eerie calm. The initial phase of the attack saw smaller, synaptically controlled bioforms probing weaknesses in the defensive line, testing for vulnerabilities and gathering data. These organisms moved with a calculated purpose, advancing and retreating as if guided by an unseen hand. Observers noted how the creatures seemed to react in real time to every shift in strategy, adapting faster than human commanders could issue new orders. The defenders quickly realized they were not facing a conventional enemy. They were fighting against an intelligence that could process and react to battlefield developments with a level of speed and precision beyond human comprehension. The first critical moment came when the defenders attempted to cut off the swarm's cohesion by targeting the larger synaptic bioforms they had identified. Initial successes saw several hive tyrants and warrior nodes destroyed, but the anticipated result, a collapse of the swarm's coordination, did not occur. Instead, the synaptic network demonstrated an alarming resilience. The remaining nodes seamlessly took over command, rerouting the flow of psychic control and stabilizing the swarm without any perceptible delay. Each fallen creature was replaced by another, as if the network anticipated and compensated for the loss before it even occurred. This adaptation was not only a testament to the network's redundancy, but to its distributed nature. Unlike traditional command structures, where the loss of key leaders often leads to confusion or breakdown, the hive mind's network responded as though it had already accounted for such contingencies. Reinforcements arrived with pinpoint timing, filling gaps before they could be exploited. The more the defenders pressed their assault on the synaptic nodes, the more the network seemed to evolve mid-battle, restructuring itself to absorb the pressure. The turning point of the battle came when the defenders attempted a desperate maneuver, a simultaneous bombardment aimed at wiping out a cluster of synapse creatures that had fortified themselves in a critical zone. The defenders hoped this would sever the central command link of the swarm and trigger mass disarray. However, the result was catastrophic for the defenders rather than the Tyranids. As the shells rained down, the network did something entirely unexpected. Instead of concentrating its psychic influence in one area, it dispersed it across multiple fronts. The swarm became a storm of autonomous, but still highly coordinated strike groups, each operating as though individually tasked yet maintaining perfect synchronization. This dispersal tactic not only neutralized the bombardment's intended effect, but also accelerated the swarm's momentum. The defenders' artillery positions, now exposed and isolated, were overrun by smaller broods that surged forward with terrifying speed. With the network's influence intact, even the smallest bioforms demonstrated lethal coordination, slipping through defensive choke points and dismantling entire regiments with a precision that suggested a predator toying with prey. Panic began to spread among the defenders, and their lines faltered under the relentless assault. By the time the swarm's primary wave arrived, the defenders were no longer operating as a cohesive force. Communication had broken down, and orders from command centers became garbled in the chaos. In contrast, the Tyranids remained as unbreakable as ever, guided by an intelligence that knew no hesitation or fear. The defenders' final stronghold was encircled and overwhelmed not by brute force alone, but by a perfectly orchestrated convergence of bioforms, each fulfilling its role within the greater plan dictated by the hive mind. This battle demonstrated a critical truth. The strength of the Synaptic Network was not only in its ability to issue commands, but in its capacity to adapt and reorganize faster than any opposing force. The network's distributed nature ensured that it could survive and thrive even when its keynodes were targeted. The ability to spread psychic control across multiple layers of bioforms allowed the Tyranids to endure what should have been a crippling blow. The defenders of Tyran, who had believed themselves safe behind their defenses, learned too late that they were facing not a mindless horde, but a singular will made manifest through countless creatures. In the aftermath, the surviving reports from Tyran spread fear throughout the Imperium. Tactical scholars began to realize that conventional military doctrine was insufficient against such an adaptive foe. The hive mind's ability to wield its synaptic network as both a tool of coordination and a living shifting strategy was unlike anything humanity had encountered. The fall of Tyran became a grim warning to the galaxy. The Tyranid swarm is not merely an unstoppable tide of flesh, but an unbreakable mind, capable of turning every loss into an opportunity to grow stronger. This realization would shape future engagements, but by then, the damage had already been done. The name of the planet itself would forever be a reminder of the price paid in underestimating the synaptic web of the hive mind. The emergence of the Tyranid Synaptic Network has had far-reaching consequences for the galaxy, reshaping the tactics, politics, and survival strategies of countless civilizations. Unlike most existential threats, the hive mind's influence extends far beyond the battlefields it dominates. The Synaptic Network's presence serves as a chilling reminder that the Tyranids are not merely an invading force, but a predator whose method of warfare transforms entire star systems into nothing more than echoes of life. One of the most immediate and devastating impacts of the Synaptic Network is its ability to render conventional military doctrines obsolete. Imperial tacticians, for example, have long relied on strategies that exploit miscommunication or breakdowns in enemy command structures. Against orcs or traitor legions, this method of decapitating leadership has often led to chaos and internal infighting. However, the Tyranid swarm operates without such vulnerabilities. The distributed nature of its network ensures that even when key synaptic creatures are eliminated, the swarm retains its cohesion. This resilience has forced commanders to abandon conventional assumptions, as they quickly learn that their most decisive strikes do little to diminish the overall threat. The network's ability to self-correct and reconfigure its structure has reshaped military strategies across the galaxy, with entire campaigns being rethought in the face of an enemy immune to disarray. Moreover, the psychological impact of the Synaptic Network cannot be overstated. Facing the Tyranid swarm is akin to confronting an unstoppable force of nature rather than a traditional enemy. Reports from survivors frequently describe the profound sense of helplessness and terror that accompanies a Tyranid assault. Soldiers speak of an overwhelming presence, a pervasive mental weight that grows stronger as the synaptic web tightens around them. This phenomenon has led to widespread panic and desertion among even the most disciplined forces, as the inescapable control of the hive mind saps the will to resist. Some speculate that this psychic pressure is not an incidental effect, but a deliberate tactic, as the hive mind's control over its bioforms allows it to apply subtle but devastating psychic influence over the minds of its enemies. Beyond the battlefield, the synaptic network has also shaped the geopolitical dynamics of the galaxy. Entire regions of space have been abandoned in the wake of hive fleet incursions, not because the Tyranids have already devoured them, but because nearby systems understand the futility of resistance. The knowledge that the hive mind's control is unbroken, even after staggering losses, has led to preemptive evacuations and ceding of territory, as planets choose survival over annihilation. This retreat mentality has led to significant shifts in power dynamics, with factions like the Imperium of Man struggling to maintain control over frontier worlds while hive fleets continue their relentless advance. The synaptic network's ability to maintain cohesion across vast distances reinforces the belief that no world is truly beyond the reach of the Tyranids. Another profound consequence of the synaptic network is its effect on research and technological development. Efforts to understand and counter the psychic framework of the hive mind have led to significant advancements in fields such as psyker training, anti-psionic warfare, and neural disruption weaponry. Organizations such as the Ordo Xenos and the Adeptus Mechanicus have devoted vast resources to uncovering ways to sever the synaptic connections that bind the swarm. These efforts, however, have met with limited success, as the network's adaptive nature often renders experimental countermeasures obsolete by the time they are deployed. This arms race has placed an enormous strain on the Imperium's already overburdened military-industrial complex, diverting resources from other critical threats and weakening defenses against internal rebellions and chaos incursions. In addition to reshaping military and political landscapes, the synaptic network has fundamentally altered the way civilizations perceive existential threats. Unlike orcs, chaos warbands, or even the enigmatic necrons, the Tyranid swarm does not engage in diplomacy, territorial disputes, or ideological warfare. It does not negotiate or retreat. The sheer finality of its method, complete consumption of all biological and material resources, has fostered a sense of existential dread throughout the galaxy. For many, the realization that the synaptic network is not only a means of coordination, but also an unyielding will to consume everything, has given rise to apocalyptic cults and nihilistic movements, especially in vulnerable fringe worlds. Entire populations, paralyzed by the inevitability of the Tyranid advance, have succumbed to despair, with some planets even turning to mass suicides or violent chaos worship as a desperate means of escape. The influence of the synaptic network has also heightened tensions between allied factions. In the face of the Tyranid threat, some planetary governors and military leaders have adopted more extreme measures, such as scorched earth policies and the extermination of their own civilian populations to prevent biomass from being harvested by the swarm. These brutal decisions have led to widespread controversy, with some arguing that such sacrifices are necessary to slow the advance of the hive fleets, while others view them as acts of monstrous inhumanity. The need to respond to a threat that cannot be negotiated with has forced the galaxy's defenders into moral dilemmas that have left scars both psychological and cultural. The adaptability of the synaptic network has also fueled scientific speculation about the limits of the hive mind's potential. There is growing fear that the hive mind is not simply consuming knowledge, but actively refining its control methods based on the diverse resistance it encounters. The more advanced and organized the opposition, the more sophisticated the network becomes. This creates a grim feedback loop where every attempt to outmaneuver or contain the swarm ultimately strengthens the synaptic system in the long run. The hive mind learns and evolves not as a fragmented organism, but as a unified consciousness that assimilates lessons across every encounter, refining its strategies to ensure that future confrontations become even more one-sided. Ultimately, the impact of the Tyranid Synaptic Network extends far beyond the destruction of individual worlds or the loss of military campaigns. It represents a paradigm shift in how civilizations view the concept of war and survival. The galaxy is slowly coming to understand that the hive mind's synaptic web is not merely a mechanism for control, but a manifestation of total biological and psychic domination. The more it spreads, the more its presence rewrites the rules of engagement, forcing even the most powerful empires to grapple with the terrifying realization that the synaptic network does not just coordinate destruction, it redefines the very concept of resistance itself. One of the most fascinating and frequently discussed aspects of the Tyranid Synaptic Network within the Warhammer 40,000 community is its capacity to exhibit traits that blur the line between biological instinct and tactical genius. The hive mind's ability to predict and outmaneuver its enemies is often regarded as one of the greatest mysteries of the swarm. While most adversaries rely on learned experience and data gathering, the Tyranid Synaptic Network seems to function with a form of immediate and instinctual knowledge, almost as though it anticipates its opponent's moves before they happen. This has led to speculation about whether the hive mind operates on a level of awareness beyond conventional causality, using the collective psychic feedback of its countless bioforms as a way to simulate future outcomes. One popular theory within the lore community is that the hive mind's ability to make near-perfect decisions is not simply a matter of calculation, but a result of its immense psychic presence resonating across space-time. According to this theory, the synaptic network may generate ripples in the warp itself, interpreting echoes of potential futures and adjusting its tactics accordingly. This would explain why, in many battles, the Tyranid swarm seems to sense hidden dangers or adapt preemptively to sudden shifts in enemy strategy. This idea has fueled debates about whether the hive mind's true strength lies not only in its vast intelligence, but also in a form of predictive foresight. Another point of intrigue revolves around the biological diversity within the synaptic network. Fans often discuss how the hive mind tailors its synaptic bioforms to specific threats, creating specialized creatures that seem custom-built to counter the unique strengths of its enemies. For instance, during invasions against psychic-heavy factions such as the Craftworld Eldar or Grey Knights, the swarm often fields an unusually high number of zoanthropes and neurothropes, reinforcing its psychic dominance. In contrast, when facing more conventional military forces like the Astra Militarum, the synaptic network adapts by deploying greater numbers of command-capable Tyranid warriors and primes to lead swarms of melee and ranged bioforms. This biological flexibility raises the question of how much control the hive mind exerts over the evolutionary process of its creations. While it is known that the synaptic network allows for immediate coordination, the extent to which the hive mind can consciously design and produce new bioforms remains a heavily debated topic. Some argue that the hive mind possesses a near-infinite genetic library from which it can draw adaptations as needed, while others suggest that it continuously experiments with new mutations during each invasion, discarding failures and reinforcing successful designs through the network's constant feedback loop. The unique role of broodlords within the synaptic structure has also sparked much discussion among fans. Unlike the larger battlefield-dominating synaptic creatures, broodlords operate more covertly, often acting independently for extended periods as they oversee genestealer cults on distant worlds. Despite their autonomy, broodlords remain tethered to the hive mind, subtly maintaining their connection until the arrival of a hive fleet. This duality, functioning both as independent leaders and as components of the larger synaptic network, has led to speculation about whether broodlords possess a form of limited free will within the constraints of their purpose. This autonomy is often perceived as one of the hive mind's greatest strengths, as it allows for a decentralized but effective means of infiltration and sabotage long before a world realizes it is doomed. The concept of shadow nodes within the network also frequently comes up in community discussions. Shadow nodes are theorized to be specialized, unconfirmed synaptic creatures that act as deep reserves of psychic power, hidden within the swarm or in orbiting bioships, only activating when key synaptic nodes on the battlefield are severed. While no canonical evidence explicitly confirms their existence, this idea has become a popular explanation for how the network can sustain its cohesion even after suffering what should be critical losses. These theoretical nodes would act as unseen relays, reinforcing weakened synaptic links and ensuring that the swarm remains operational despite catastrophic damage. This theory, if true, suggests that the hive mind is capable of embedding layers of redundancy far deeper than previously thought, making the network even more resilient than it appears on the surface. Additionally, there is significant debate over the extent of the hive mind's influence in the absence of a direct synaptic link. While it is well documented that the loss of synapse creatures can cause lesser bioforms to revert to animalistic behavior, there are rare reports of Tyranid broods continuing to operate with limited cohesion, even after being cut off from their main synaptic node. This phenomenon has led to speculation that some bioforms may retain an echo of the hive mind's will, allowing them to act independently for brief periods before fully succumbing to instinct. This raises unsettling questions about the nature of the hive mind's control, whether it is purely active or whether traces of its influence remain imprinted on its creations even when they are severed from the network. Finally, one of the most controversial topics among fans is whether the hive mind's synaptic network could be weaponized against itself. Some theorists argue that if the hive mind's network could be disrupted or turned against it through advanced psychic interference, it might be possible to destabilize entire swarms. However, others counter that such a disruption would likely require an unimaginable amount of psychic power and precision, given the hive mind's adaptability and immense redundancy. Attempts by powerful psychers to sever or redirect the synaptic network in recorded battles have often ended in catastrophic failure, with the psyker being overwhelmed or driven insane by the sheer weight of the hive mind's presence. The debate continues over whether this represents an inherent vulnerability or an unavoidable consequence of confronting a mind so vast that it defies understanding. The discussions surrounding these unique aspects of the synaptic network reveal not only the community's fascination with the Tyranids, but also the larger philosophical questions they pose about control, consciousness, and survival. The synaptic network is not merely a mechanism for dominance. It is a living system that reflects the hive mind's terrifying purpose and its capacity for endless adaptation. Fans continue to speculate about the network's true capabilities, driven by the understanding that for every known function, there may yet be countless unseen aspects waiting to reveal themselves in the Tyranid swarm's next evolutionary leap. Among the countless bioforms created and directed by the hive mind, there are specific Tyranids whose very existence represents the pinnacle of the synaptic network's power and adaptability. These apex synaptic creatures are not just individual organisms, but embodiments of the hive mind's strategies, designed to dominate battlefields and ensure the complete cohesion of the swarm. Each of these bioforms serves a specialized purpose, and their presence can single-handedly turn the tide of entire campaigns. One of the most infamous and feared among these creatures is the Swarm Lord. Unlike other hive tyrants, which are unique but replaceable generals of the Swarm Lord is a recurring manifestation that is created only in times of great need. This bioform is not simply a strategic commander. It is a reflection of the hive mind's accumulated battle wisdom across eons. The Swarm Lord is known for its unmatched tactical acumen, capable of predicting enemy maneuvers with an almost precognitive precision. This makes it particularly devastating against organized military forces that rely on formation strategies and command hierarchies. Its primary strength lies in its ability to anticipate and counter even the most intricate of enemy plans, often forcing opponents into futile attempts to outmaneuver a foe that seems to be several steps ahead. Despite its immense power, the Swarm Lord is not without limitations. It relies heavily on its ability to maintain battlefield control through its synaptic reach. While its physical prowess and combat capabilities are formidable, even surpassing other Hive tyrants, its true strength lies in its capacity to direct the swarm in perfect harmony. Disrupting the Swarm Lord's ability to issue commands, such as through overwhelming psychic interference, can weaken its effectiveness, though few have ever succeeded in doing so before being consumed by the very force they sought to destabilize. Another notable synaptic powerhouse is the neurothrope, a variant of the zoanthrope bioform that amplifies the psychic energy flowing through the synaptic network. Neurothropes are often described as living conduits of the hive mind's will, capable of unleashing devastating psychic attacks while simultaneously reinforcing the cohesion of nearby swarms. Their main purpose is twofold: to act as powerful combat psychers and to repair the synaptic web when it comes under assault. They can absorb ambient psychic energy, converting it into devastating warp-based attacks or using it to heal and stabilize damaged synaptic links. The neurothrope's greatest strength lies in its versatility, as it can shift between offense and support depending on the needs of the swarm. However, this also makes it a priority target for enemy psychers and ranged specialists, as its destruction can significantly weaken the hive mind's psychic presence in a localized area. Additionally, neurothropes are not as physically resilient as some other synaptic bioforms, relying instead on their psychic defenses and the protection of nearby swarms to survive direct confrontations. The Broodlord stands apart from other synaptic bioforms due to its role as both a leader and a predator. Broodlords are biologically engineered to act as the vanguard of the hive mind's influence, guiding genestealer cults and coordinating early infiltration efforts before the arrival of a full hive fleet. Their presence on a world often signals that the planet is already doomed, as they orchestrate the rise of hybrid cults that destabilize entire planetary populations. In combat, the Broodlord is a terrifying force of nature, combining lethal melee prowess with a powerful synaptic aura that strengthens nearby genestealers and cult members. One of the Broodlord's key strengths is its ability to act independently for long periods, maintaining its link to the hive mind even when far from the main swarm. This makes it an invaluable asset in prolonged infiltration campaigns. However, its relative isolation can also be a weakness. If exposed and cornered without reinforcements, even a Broodlord's formidable resilience can be overcome by concentrated firepower or powerful psychers. Despite this, few can deny the impact of a Broodlord's influence, as their role within the synaptic network is essential for the preparatory stages of hive fleet invasions. The Maliceptor is another synaptic bioform that commands significant attention within the community. This creature is an embodiment of psychic domination, designed to disrupt and weaken enemy formations through raw psychic power. The Maliceptor's primary role is to suppress enemy psychers and scramble the minds of opposing forces, making it a crucial tool for neutralizing enemy leadership and command structures. Its presence on the battlefield can render entire squads disoriented, confused, or mentally incapacitated, allowing the swarm to close in unchallenged. However, the Maliceptor's reliance on its psychic abilities makes it vulnerable to direct physical confrontations. It is heavily dependent on the support of other synaptic nodes to maintain its position, as it lacks the sheer durability of larger synaptic bioforms like hive tyrants. Nevertheless, its contribution to the synaptic network is invaluable, as it ensures that enemy psychers cannot sever or disrupt the hive mind's influence without significant cost. Perhaps the most unique of all synaptic bioforms is the Norn Queen, the fabled and enigmatic mother creature responsible for the creation of the vast bioorganisms within the swarm. While rarely seen in direct combat, the Norn Queen is believed to serve as a critical hub for the hive mind's genetic engineering and synaptic distribution. The Norn Queen's role within the synaptic network is unparalleled, as it not only maintains the genetic template for every bioform, but also oversees the production and adaptation of new creatures. It is speculated that the synaptic commands of the hive mind are amplified through the Norn Queens, allowing the swarm to maintain coordination across astronomical distances. The Norn Queen's primary strength lies in its ability to control the genetic future of the Tyranid swarm, shaping new bioforms to fit the evolving needs of the synaptic network. However, its immobility and reliance on hive ships for protection make it a vulnerable but heavily defended target. Any attempt to strike at the heart of the hive fleet would inevitably require confronting the Norn Queen, though no known force has ever succeeded in breaching the layers of bioships and synaptic defenses that guard it. Each of these synaptic entities represents a different facet of the hive mind's terrifying genius. Whether they lead from the front lines, manipulate the battlefield through psychic domination, or direct the swarm from the safety of orbiting bioships, they embody the strengths and adaptability of the synaptic network. Their unique qualities ensure that the Tyranid swarm remains an ever-evolving threat, capable of countering even the most elaborate defenses with precision and purpose. The galaxy's defenders know that wherever these apex synaptic creatures appear, devastation follows. The Tyranid Synaptic Network is one of the most enigmatic and highly debated aspects of the Warhammer 40,000 universe. Despite extensive battles with the Tyranids and efforts to understand the mechanics of their hive mind, there remain numerous unanswered questions and theories that fuel speculation among scholars, tacticians, and fans alike. One of the most prominent debates revolves around the true scale of the hive mind's consciousness. Some theorists propose that the Tyranid hive mind is not a singular centralized entity, but a collective intelligence formed from the combined psychic echoes of every creature within the swarm. According to this view, the hive mind's synaptic network functions more like an ecosystem of interdependent psychic signals rather than a singular omnipotent will. This raises the question: is there a central mind directing the swarm, or is the entire system decentralized, operating as a sum of its many parts? This theory challenges the perception of the hive mind as an all-knowing entity, suggesting that its terrifying unity may instead be the result of perfect synchronization rather than singular intent. Another controversial topic is the extent of the hive mind's influence beyond its immediate synaptic network. Some reports from survivors of Tyranid incursions describe feelings of unease, despair, and even madness long before the arrival of the swarm. This has led to the theory that the hive mind's psychic presence can extend beyond the reach of its bioforms, subtly weakening the morale and mental stability of those within its sphere of influence. If true, this would imply that the hive mind's power is not limited by the physical proximity of its creatures, but can manifest as an ambient psychic pressure felt across entire star systems. However, skeptics argue that these sensations are simply the result of fear and psychological trauma caused by rumors of Tyranid invasions. The question of whether the hive mind has a long-term goal beyond consumption is another point of intense discussion. The Tyranids are often characterized as a force driven solely by an insatiable hunger to consume biomass and evolve. However, some believe that their behavior may be part of a larger, more deliberate strategy. The theory suggests that the synaptic network may be evolving not merely to coordinate more efficient consumption, but to build something greater, possibly a galaxy-spanning superconsciousness capable of controlling not only biological life, but even reshaping the very nature of reality. Proponents of this idea point to the hive mind's seemingly endless capacity for adaptation and its ability to assimilate not just genetic material, but also the tactics and strengths of its enemies. If this theory holds any truth, it implies that the Tyranid's ultimate goal could be something far more ambitious than survival, total psychic and physical dominance of all life in the galaxy. A particularly intriguing mystery involves the origins of the synaptic network itself. Despite numerous theories, the precise circumstances that led to the creation of such a complex system remain unknown. Some speculate that the Tyranids may not have always been a unified swarm, and that the hive mind may have emerged as a response to an ancient existential threat. According to this hypothesis, the Tyranids' current form could be the result of an evolutionary arms race against an even older enemy, forcing them to develop the ultimate form of biological unity. This has led to speculation about the possible existence of a long-forgotten foe that once rivaled or even surpassed the Tyranids, a species or force that may have shaped the swarm into the apex predator it is today. Another enduring question concerns the hive mind's interaction with the warp. The Tyranids are known to exert a powerful psychic presence that disrupts the warp and creates a phenomenon known as the shadow in the warp. This psychic disturbance interferes with communication, travel, and psychic abilities, yet the nature of this effect remains poorly understood. Some theorists believe that the shadow in the warp is not merely a defensive mechanism, but an offensive weapon designed to weaken the connection between mortal minds and the warp. Others propose that the hive mind's influence extends deeper, suggesting that it may be capable of shaping the very fabric of the warp itself. If this is true, the implications are staggering, as it would mean that the hive mind could potentially rival or even overcome the influence of chaos itself. The possibility that the hive mind could be part of a larger multi-galactic phenomenon is another subject of intense speculation. The fact that the Tyranids have entered the galaxy from extragalactic space raises the question of how many other galaxies have already fallen to their hunger. Some argue that the Tyranid swarm we know may be just a fraction of a much larger network that spans countless star systems beyond the reach of Imperial knowledge. If true, this would mean that the Imperium is not facing a single isolated invasion, but is merely one of countless civilizations being consumed by an entity far larger than any the galaxy has ever faced. The fear that the Tyranid hive fleets represent only the vanguard of a far greater swarm is one of the most chilling possibilities, and has led to the grim conclusion that resistance may only delay the inevitable. One of the more radical theories suggests that the hive mind may not be entirely immune to external influence. Despite the overwhelming evidence of its psychic dominance, some speculate that the synaptic network could be vulnerable to a form of subversion or corruption. There have been isolated reports of Tyranid bioforms displaying erratic behavior, leading some to wonder if the hive mind's control can be disrupted under specific conditions. While these reports are unverified, they raise the unsettling possibility that the hive mind's unity is not as absolute as it appears. If a force were capable of penetrating or corrupting the synaptic network, it could potentially turn the Tyranid's greatest strength into a catastrophic weakness. Lastly, the question of whether the hive mind itself is sentient in a way that mortals can comprehend remains unanswered. Some believe that the hive mind operates purely as an instinctual force, devoid of emotion or higher reasoning, while others argue that its actions suggest a form of malevolent intelligence. The fact that the hive mind adapts, learns, and develops counter-strategies has led many to wonder if it possesses a form of personality or intention that goes beyond survival. This question strikes at the heart of what the Tyranids represent. Are they merely a biological inevitability, or are they the manifestation of something far more sinister, an entity capable of malice and purpose? These unanswered questions and speculative theories highlight the enduring mystery of the Tyranid Synaptic Network. Despite the countless battles fought against the swarm, there remains a profound sense that the galaxy has only begun to understand the full scope of the hive mind's power and purpose. Each new encounter with the Tyranids seems to raise more questions than answers, fueling a grim fascination with the nature of this unbreakable mind. The long-term consequences of the Tyranid Synaptic Network extend far beyond the immediate destruction of planets and the devastation of star systems. The presence of the hive mind reshapes not only the territories it consumes, but the very fabric of galactic strategy, survival, and technological evolution. The relentless adaptive nature of the swarm poses questions that few civilizations are prepared to answer, forcing both political and military powers to confront an enemy that fundamentally redefines what it means to resist extinction. One of the most profound potential shifts is the gradual evolution of military doctrines across the galaxy. The Tyranid Synaptic Network has already demonstrated that conventional methods of warfare, reliant on centralized command structures, are highly vulnerable when pitted against a decentralized yet cohesive force. As the Imperium and other factions face the Hive fleets, they may be forced to decentralize their command hierarchies, creating more independent and autonomous units to avoid catastrophic disruption when leadership is severed. This shift, while necessary for survival, could lead to long-term instability, as more independent commanders may begin acting with increased autonomy, straining centralized control and risking fragmentation. The technological arms race prompted by the Synaptic Network also carries significant implications. The need for effective anti-psionic technologies and synapse disruption weapons has already led to breakthroughs in the fields of psyker training, nullification fields, and bio-disruption warfare. However, the galaxy's increasing reliance on psychic weaponry and countermeasures could have unintended consequences. By engaging in this arms race, factions like the Imperium risk amplifying their reliance on unstable and dangerous forces. The more psychic technology is developed, the greater the risk of warp-related catastrophes. Some fear that this focus on psychic warfare could inadvertently weaken barriers between reality and the warp, creating more vulnerabilities to chaos corruption even as new weapons are designed to combat the Tyranids. In addition to technological shifts, the hive mind's continued expansion raises concerns about the long-term depletion of the galaxy's natural resources. Unlike other threats that conquer and subjugate worlds, the Tyranids consume everything: flora, fauna, oceans, atmospheres, and even mineral deposits, leaving barren husks in their wake. As more worlds are stripped of life, the galaxy's remaining habitable planets become increasingly valuable and contested. This could lead to an escalation of interfactional wars as different species and empires fight desperately for access to remaining resources, even as the Tyranids continue their relentless advance. The Synaptic Network's efficiency in stripping systems of usable material creates a bleak future where survival hinges on securing what little remains. Another long-term consequence of the hive mind's synaptic web is the psychological toll it exacts on those who oppose it. The shadow in the warp, a byproduct of the network's psychic presence, has already proven to be a devastating factor in warfare, cutting off communications and inducing terror on a massive scale. Entire populations have been driven to despair, some even turning to chaos cults or self-destruction as an alternative to being consumed. If the hive mind's influence continues to grow unchecked, it is possible that entire regions of space will fall into a permanent state of paranoia and hopelessness, destabilizing even systems untouched by the swarm. This mental erosion could result in widespread collapse long before the Tyranids physically arrive, weakening defensive efforts and making future invasions even easier. There is also the question of whether the hive mind's expansion could lead to a critical mass where its presence becomes a galactic constant rather than a distant threat. Some theorists speculate that if enough Tyranid fleets converge within the galaxy, the combined synaptic influence could create a permanent and all-encompassing shadow in the warp. This would fundamentally alter space travel and communication, making warp travel even more dangerous and unreliable than it already is. Should this occur, the galaxy could be plunged into a new dark age where entire sectors are cut off from one another, unable to communicate or reinforce due to the psychic fog that blankets the stars. Such an outcome would accelerate the fragmentation of galactic powers, leaving isolated worlds vulnerable to chaos incursions, orc warbands, and the unrelenting swarm. Another long-term implication is the potential impact on evolutionary processes throughout the galaxy. The Tyranids do not simply consume their prey. They assimilate genetic material and use it to refine their future bioforms. This constant cycle of predation and adaptation forces every species that survives contact with the Tyranids to undergo its own form of forced evolution. The Imperium's increasing reliance on augmentations, advanced weaponry, and genetic experimentation may be a direct consequence of this evolutionary arms race. Even the more technologically advanced species, such as the Aldari and the Tau, have been forced to reconsider their strategies and develop new countermeasures. In time, the presence of the Synaptic Network could lead to the emergence of entirely new forms of life, shaped by the need to resist the swarm's relentless hunger. On a more existential level, the Synaptic Network challenges the fundamental assumptions of what life and intelligence mean in the galaxy. The hive mind's ability to coordinate billions of organisms with a singular purpose raises philosophical questions about individuality, freedom, and survival. Some fear that the Tyranids represent the ultimate endpoint of biological evolution, complete unity at the cost of individuality. This has led to a growing movement among certain fringe groups who believe that resistance against the hive mind is futile, and that the only path to survival is to embrace a form of biological collectivism, surrendering individuality in exchange for unity. These ideas, though widely condemned, reveal the profound impact the Tyranids have had on the cultural psyche of the galaxy. Despite the grim implications, some speculate that the hive mind's synaptic web could inadvertently force the galaxy's factions into a form of unity. Faced with an enemy that cannot be reasoned with or deterred, alliances that once seemed impossible may be forged out of necessity. The Imperium, the Tau, and even the fractured remnants of the Aldari may be compelled to set aside their differences in the face of mutual annihilation. While such cooperation would be fraught with distrust and betrayal, it could also lead to an unprecedented era of collaboration and innovation. However, this fragile unity would be sustained only by the constant threat of extinction, making it unclear whether peace or conflict would dominate in the aftermath of a Tyranid defeat, if such a defeat is even possible. In the grand scheme of things, the Tyranid Synaptic Network represents more than just an immediate threat to individual worlds. It is a force that redefines the very nature of war, survival, and identity in the galaxy. Whether its continued expansion leads to devastation or unexpected unity, one thing remains certain. The hive mind's influence will continue to shape the destiny of every species it encounters. As the swarm grows and adapts, the galaxy's defenders must either evolve or perish, for the Synaptic Network does not simply seek to conquer, it seeks to consume everything, leaving no room for weakness or hesitation. In this new reality, the survival of the galaxy may depend not only on defeating the Tyranids, but on understanding what it means to resist an unbreakable will that spans the stars.